Okay, so while we are waiting for others to join, so I just wanted to understand how many of you are already aware of Azure and already working in Azure? Maybe there is a raise button option in Teams. Probably you can make use of it. Uh, how many of you are aware of Azure already? Okay, Girish is already aware. Good. Anyone else already aware or already working on Azure? Any role, probably admin or DevOps or architect or any role for that matters. Okay, so only one. And how many are already in IT? A lot of people will be in IT, but how many are not in IT? Maybe that will be the right question to ask. Okay, so Sriteja, okay. So yeah, it seems these are already in IT. Any freshers here? Anyone who just passed out from college and are trying to attending this just to understand what is it? Okay. Yeah, you can raise down your hands. How many of you are 10 plus years of experience here? Can you please raise your hand? I know one. Uh, anyone else? Okay. So it's 10:05 now. So we'll start with the training. However, we have the recording available. So if anyone joins late or anyone's, they'll check the recording. If anyone missed to join, so we'll share the recording later with everyone. Okay. So today, first of all, thank you so much for joining this demo because you took time on your weekend and you're spending time here. So you might have some questions in your mind, and you can ask all those questions. So before that, I'll just take about an hour time. Probably I'll cover all the content that I want to deliver, and post that will open for questions. Whatever questions that you have, you can ask. And then in the middle, also, if you have some questions, you can always ask. And before I start off, I just want to take a couple of questions. Anyone has any questions regarding this course? Like, few people already asked me, like, why did you keep as Azure admin plus Azure DevOps? Because outside the people are only, delivering Azure admin or Azure DevOps, but why is your course is combination of both? That is a question that I got. I'll answer that question anyways. Anyone else has any other question apart from this? Okay, I'll take that as no. Okay, so the answer for the question that I called out is, yeah. Before that, my name is Shankar. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, and I did my certifications in AZ104 administrator and architect 303A4, 304, and then 400 DevOps, then 500. So these are the certifications that I hold right now, and I'm planning to do 140 and 200 in future. This is about me. Uh, so this is a certification that uh, we are discussing about right now. Okay, so Azure DevOps actually is an expert level certification. So in Azure, you have stars for certifications. For fundamentals, 1 star; for associate, 2 stars; for expert, 3 stars. So there is one prerequisite in Azure that, so any expert level certification that you go through, be it Azure DevOps expert or be it Azure Solution Architect. So these two are actually expert level certifications. So any expert level certification has one prerequisite. So ideally, associate level also will have a prerequisite, but that's an optional. So if you're trying to learn Azure Administrator, which is a 2 star level, and this 900 is something optional, so you can skip it and you can directly learn this. But if you're learning Azure DevOps Expert, so Microsoft strongly recommends you at least have knowledge into any one of the 2 star certifications. When I say any one, one is admin, other one is developer, Azure developer. these two are 2-star certifications. So if you see, so this is actually a screen snap taken from Microsoft uh, certification dashboard. So this is what we are trying to achieve with this training. So to achieve this training, you have actually, ideally we should start from fundamentals, but this is actually an optional one. If you are really interested, we can start with this. Uh, but if you want, you can skip it. So there is no problem there. So, but what we are doing in this training, we are also starting with little bit of fundamentals in the training, and we'll start up with those fundamentals. And then idea is that a person who doesn't even know about Azure, we want to get him up to speed, and then teach him for administrator, then architect on expert level knowledge. So that's the idea. This whole duration is about 2.5 months time. So that was the main idea. So here, as I said, this is an optional one. But if you look at, so Microsoft strongly recommends you to complete. This is actually mandatory, not an optional one. So you must, to get this expert level badge from Microsoft, you must have hold at least one certification out of these two. So either you hold admin, or either you hold developer. That is completely up to you based on your background. If you're basically a developer background person, then probably you can actually attempt developer. If you are from support or admin related side, so you can attempt AZ-104. So these two, out of these two, any one is must to actually uh, get this Azure developer, Azure DevOps engineer expert badge. So if you ask me, I mean, what will I get if I just only complete 400? So there you'll get, it is kind of still incomplete. You won't get this badge only if you complete the 400, because in 400 you only discuss about a lot of DevOps related tools, automation, and version control, Azure pipelines, all those stuff we'll discuss in DevOps, but you don't actually deal with Azure environment. So you'll not deal with Azure environment much. But nowadays, what we are seeing as a trend is, so a lot of organization, they don't actually prefer a direct admin. They don't prefer direct DevOps. They are actually preferring mix of admin plus DevOps. So that is a trend because they can actually save on resource with that. So that is the approach. If you open any of the job opening, so you will see that info, because they look for infra knowledge, at the same time DevOps automation related knowledge. So it's a mix of both. So when you have mix of both, only then I think it is easy for you to get a job, and the probability will be higher for you to get a call letter, or get a new job in Azure. So with that idea, we have started with this. So how does this work is, so primarily today, yeah, before I go further, so I want to set some expectations. So this demo is all about sharing some, what we are actually going to do in the training, and then also giving some basics about cloud, and then and also discussing about the competitors for Azure, how they are right now, how Azure at the moment, and I mean, is it better or good, how is it right now. And also we are going to see past 3-4 years of trend, how Microsoft actually evolved, and how other competitors were there in the last 3-4 years. So that you'll get an idea which cloud you actually should actually start learning, because which cloud should will have some future, and you actually should start learning. So to get that idea, we are going to cover a bit of basics on Azure, like cloud computing, public, private, stuff like that. And then we are going to compare other competitors, uh, in terms of number of opportunities, in terms of revenue, in terms of market share, in terms of future growth opportunities. All those things will cover. And then at the end, we'll see the content what we are going to cover as part of Azure 104, and also as part of Azure AZ-400, AZ-104 and 400. What are the content that we are going to cover, and also what's the timeline for the content. So when we will start and when we'll end, and when the DevOps will start, and all those stuff we'll discuss at the end. And finally, we'll also discuss a little bit about how, if you want to actually plan, if you plan to clear certification, what is the approach that you need to follow, and what kind of questions that you'll expect in the exam, different types of questions that you can expect in exam. And also we are also going to, yeah, we are going to see all these in today's demo. In next 1 hour, I'm going to cover all these. At the end, I will take up questions. So this is what we are going to cover as part of this demo. So that's the reason I'm just trying to set expectation before in hand. Okay. So um, as I said, this is something the path that we have seen already. So the idea is to cover this and then these two, so that these two kind of a package that we are offering. So these two, if you can cover these two within, I think within few months time, I'm sure that you'll get a good opportunity. Is what the idea. Okay, so let us, any questions that you have before I just start off with cloud fundamentals. Probably most of you are already aware of this, cloud computing fundamental. Probably you guys might have already completed few certifications, but I would actually request you to just be patient for maybe for this demo and initial few days, because I want to, I want to deliver this so that others who are actually new to this Azure also should be able to pick up to the speed, and then start learning along with you guys. So initial few days will be completely, the focus will be into the foundations, the basics of cloud. Anyone want to ask any question?
Sir, I have a small question. So how much would be the scripting level includes in this DevOps or Azure? Because
Yeah. So,
I
mm.
mean, as far as I'm concerned with this scripting, I'm a little bit worried about the scripting. There is any in the scripting knowledge. That is the reason I'm asking. What is the expertise level you will be expecting in the Azure DevOps?
So, okay, so we don't expect anything from you, because we don't expect you to already have some knowledge actually. So the idea of this, this course, the model is that, we want to start with basics and slowly do everything in GUI, and then start doing it in a automation. So that's the idea. So even if you are not aware of any scripting, it is totally fine, because we are actually going to learn all of these in the training.
Fine, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah. Uh, okay, I'll take that as no. So let's start with cloud computing. First of all, what is cloud computing? So cloud computing is, yeah, most of you are already aware probably, but few of you may not aware. So I'm trying to cover. So cloud computing is the delivery of computing services over the internet, and enabling faster innovation and flexible resources at economies of scale. So delivering computing services over an internet to actually achieve faster innovation and flexible resources, and and also at economical price. So that's a biggest thing, right? So this is what cloud computing. So in cloud computing, cloud providers will actually deliver services such as compute, services such as compute, networking, storage, analytics. These services uh, provide you as a rental basis, so over an internet. So this is about cloud computing. These are the commonly used, very popularly used services, but you'll have a lot more services than these. Okay, so the benefits of cloud computing. First of all, why this cloud computing has come into picture. So maybe 10-15 years back, we have physical servers where just set up one server. We have to struggle a bit. Let's say you're sitting somewhere here, and you're actually working for an organization. The client location is somewhere in UK or US, and the data center will of course be located in US or UK. So you have to coordinate with your data center engineer there. So and then you have to coordinate with him and insert OS, whatever the media, OS media, to install operating system and then to set it up. So that is actually used to take a lot of time, right? Starting from procuring a server, and then once you get the server, installing operating system, and then configure the application that you want to configure. So all these this process used to take at least week time in back in maybe 15 years back. But now later, what happened? The virtualization has come into picture. So what is virtualization? So masking the physical hardware, and having a virtualization layer in a middle, which is actually hiding the physical hardware. And on top of it, we are creating a virtual machines, VMs. So that virtualization concept has come into picture. Then that is actually, wasn't trending for some time, where we used to create VMs in a very very less time. Yeah, within few minutes itself, we were able to create virtual machines using the virtualization concept, and we are able to delete whenever we don't need. So that's the advantage we got with virtualization. We are able to utilize the hardware capacity. At least earlier 15 years back, we are only able to utilize 10%, 30%, 40% of our physical hardware resources. But after virtualization concept, so we are able to utilize 70, 80% of the physical hardware resources. When I say physical hardware resources, so ideally, to get in detail here, so let's say you purchase let's say you consider you're starting a startup. Not right now, 15 years back, you actually decide to start a startup. Then for startup, you might need a website. So to build a website, what's the way that you have to do to host a website in your on premises, in your location or building? So you have to first of all purchase a hardware in the sense, uh, a CPU and the memory, kind of a bigger with a bigger resources, like you'll go with the 16 GB, 16 gig or 32 gig RAM and CPU with more number of cores of CPU. So you'll get that hardware. Probably you'll spend 1 or 2 lakh rupees to actually get the hardware. Then you will insert OS, and then you purchase operating system again separately. You'll install operating system. On top of it, you will configure your maybe you'll install Windows Server, let's say. Then you'll enable IS role and you create a web server. Then you host that web server. So this is only just, I'm talking about web server, but there are a lot of other components that will be involved. Maybe you'll have a router, switch, all those firewalls, all those things will also be involved. So I'm only talking about the servers here. So that's the process that you follow. So initially, when you plan to build a startup, so of course you want to actually purchase a little a bigger one than the requirement. Let's say you have a requirement of 8 gigs of RAM, you'll go with 32 gigs of RAM, because considering the future. But once you once you actually build a website, then the usage of your hardware will be less than 30%, 40% for continuously for years and years. So that remaining capacity, you will think, considering the future, you might have purchased the bigger one, but the remaining capacity is completely going into waste. So you're not actually using that, right? So so that the virtualization concept has come into picture to utilize that unused compute resources. So on top, the virtualization is, yeah, I'm not going in detail what is virtualization, hypervisor, all that stuff. The virtualization concept has actually enabled all organizations to utilize the complete physical hardware resources, at least 80% to an extent. And that is how this lot of organizations saved some time, saved some money, importantly, and also time, because if you have to create another server, you don't have to purchase physical server, but instead here you create another virtual machine directly. So saving time, money, real estate, lot of things. So uh, in virtualization, VMware is in those days, VMware is actually the famous VMware company is famous for the virtualization, vSphere. So and then although Microsoft also has its own product, Hyper-V. So but comparatively, VMware was much more famous compared to Hyper-V. So all these cloud why I actually covered this topic, because all these cloud providers, they use virtualization in the backend. So they actually build up big physical servers, and then on top of those physical servers, they'll have this hypervisor, which is responsible for virtualization, and then they'll create virtual machines on top of it. Those virtual machines, they'll deliver to us over the internet. So that's what all these cloud providers do. When I say all these, we have Azure, we have AWS, we have GCP, we have Alibaba, we have Oracle Cloud. Yeah, we have many other, IBM Cloud as well. So these are the cloud providers that are available out there. So the benefit of the cloud computing is that, first of all, cost. So cost, why cost? Because here you will be actually charged to pay as you go model, which is on hourly basis. Let's say you want to use a virtual machine for 1 hour. You create a virtual machine and you use it for 1 hour. After 1 hour, you simply delete it. Probably for that 1 hour, you'll be charged only maybe 10-20 rupees, not more than that. Again, depends on the size of your VM. So it is cost effective. But it's not really this kind of concept is really not possible in your physical back in 15 days here 15 years back. 15 years back, if you want to use it, even if you want to use server for 10 maybe 10 days or 1 hour, so you have to again, that's a difficult process. You don't know how actually you can actually set that up. But now here everything is possible. And then global scale is something, sitting in here you'll be able to create a virtual machine in US. So that's really big advantage, because any startup who actually starts up in their own city, probably in Hyderabad or Bangalore or Chennai, so you start a startup there, and then once the business is actually growing, if you want to expand to another country, so it is very difficult task in those days. You have to first of all fly there, and then set up infrastructure, then actually build the website, because the reason you want to set up there, so that your end users located there will have less latency in accessing your website or anything as such. So but here in Azure, you can sit in Hyderabad or Bangalore or Chennai, Pune, anywhere. You can sit here and you can directly create a server in US. So that's another advantage that you get. And then performance. When you create your services, be it a website or be it any other application, nearest to your end users, of course, you'll get a better performance. And security. So if you notice, you don't see any small organization actually into the cloud. All the organizations that you're seeing into the cloud, they are very top 20 organizations, because they'll invest huge money into the security. Those organizations will invest billions of dollars into the security. They will ensure that security will be highest priority for them, because security is something plays an important role in a customer trust. So they'll invest huge money in there. And then speed. But this is something not possible for a startup or a small organization to actually invest such a huge money into the security. Then speed, amount of time it takes for you to create a service in Azure, service or resource in Azure. So you will be able to create a server within a minute itself in Azure. So that's you'll be able to create it fastly, and also you can destroy also fastly. And then productivity. So when you're actually renting services, when cloud provider is actually providing services, virtual machine or anything as such that you need, of course you don't really have to worry about the backend hardware. So hardware is something will be completely taken care by cloud providers, be it Azure or AWS or GCP or Alibaba. So they will take care of the backend hardware. Even if any hardware is failed, so it is their responsibility to replace it. So you will not have that burden on your head. So if you host that environment in your premises, let's say you have a server in your building, so in your building, then if something goes bad, so of course it is your responsibility to replace it, right? But when it comes to cloud, so it's cloud providers will take care of that. And most of you, I think, studied BTech, right? I mean, BTech or degree, any education. So in your colleges, you might have noticed there will be a small server room with completely fully AC, so with a transparent glass. So I have seen in my college, so I am just correlating that. So most of you might have seen that is actually server. If anything goes bad, it's college responsibility to actually replace it. But instead now, all colleges can actually host their website in a cloud, so they don't have to worry about that, because they may not have that expertise to take care of that ideally. And then reliability. So reliability is something very important. This plays a major role, because it's not only just creating a service and using it, but it is also responsible that it is also important that how reliable is your solution. Let's say even if something goes bad, how faster you can actually bring it back online. Let's say you lost some data, how faster you can actually retrieve the data with the complete integrity. So this reliability plays an important role. Azure provides backup and disaster recovery for business continuity. So we have a regions concept that I'll cover in next slides. And backup by default in Azure, whatever you store, any file or any data, minimum they'll maintain 3 copies in the backend. 3 copies. So let's say you upload one file, there will be three copies maintained in the backend, so that even if one hardware goes down, you'll still have 2 copies immediately. Those two, using those 2 copies, they'll ensure another copy is replicated immediately. So that is how they maintain this reliability. Coming to public cloud. So what is public cloud? So public cloud is something we have been discussing about cloud computing. So public cloud is something a cloud provider, like it is owned by a cloud service or hosting provider, provides resources and services to multiple organizations or users. So it is publicly available. Anyone whoever actually want to use it, they will be able to go ahead and use it. So it's something like that. And it can be accessed via secure network connection, typically over an internet. This is about public cloud. Coming to private cloud is something like uh, organizations will create a cloud environment in their data center. So when I say cloud environment in their data center, they will leverage the virtualization concepts, Hyper-V or Hyper-V or VMware or Nutanix. These are all virtualization experts. So they will leverage those technologies, and they'll create a cloud within on-premises in the sense this building will be owned by you. So in this building, you'll have a server room. Probably that server room will contains your servers. So since this is your building and these are your servers, those are private to you. No one else can access them, right? So that is why we call it as private cloud. And in this case, everything completely it is your responsibility to ensure that your servers are up, and even if anything goes bad, it is your responsibility to replace them. Coming to hybrid cloud, so this is one of the trend some time back. Now the trend has changed. I'll talk about that as well. So hybrid cloud, initially any organization who want to migrate from their this is your private cloud. Slowly a lot of organizations started migrating those private cloud stuff to public cloud. So starting from they manage everything. Slowly they want to reduce that burden. They're migrating the stuff to public cloud so that public cloud will manage everything, and they'll only leverage the services directly, applications. So that's the approach a lot of organizations have already gone through, and it's been a lot of years. Cloud has actually started in 2006, so it's been close to 14 years, 14 15 years now. So cloud has come. So it's been a lot of time. A lot of organizations have already migrated their environment to cloud, but still there is 50% left. I would say 50% is migrated, still 50% left in terms of hardware resources. So hybrid cloud is something an organization will want to maintain their own cloud, and along with public cloud. Public cloud is something, as I said, Azure, AWS, GCP, Alibaba, these are called public clouds. And hybrid cloud is something, a cloud setup within your on-premises. Within your on-premises can be VMware, vSphere, or Hyper-V, or Nutanix. Yeah, these are kind of examples for your private cloud on your on-premises. From here, we are actually migrating to one is a migration. Other one is there will be few organizations like banking organizations, due to company politics, or maybe that is one reason, due to their governmental policies, they'll not be able to store their data in cloud providers. They'll prefer to store the data here, but they'll use the virtual machine servers in a cloud. So their data will be stored in their premises, and but the servers they will leverage these cloud providers for servers, compute resources, servers or applications or anything as such, any other servers. So that's the approach in hybrid cloud. Yeah, so public cloud, you don't need any capital investment. You don't have to make any initial investment. You directly start using services, and you pay them on hourly basis, pay as you go model. Private cloud is something you need some investment initially. You have to purchase servers, and you have to purchase software assurances for all the servers, and then VMware, vSphere licenses and stuff like that. So initial investment will be there, and but here ongoing charges will be little less comparatively, but investment will be huge. So if any startup actually want to set this up, it will put a lot of pressure on the startup, because they'll make a lot of investment initially. If the plan works out, that will be good. If it doesn't works out, the company will go into bankrupt. So to avoid that, public cloud will give you a flexibility of pay as you go model. You start using it, you only pay for what you use. So that's the biggest advantage for startups. And then hybrid cloud is something, very big customers who want to have little more flexibility. They want to keep their own private cloud. Along with the private cloud, they also want to keep their own public cloud. So those kind of organizations, big organizations, will want to have this hybrid cloud setup. So capex, opex is something. Capex is a capital investment that you invest initially for initially you invest initially for anything, like in private cloud we talked about you need to purchase servers and stuff like that. So there you spend money, that is capital expenditure. Operational expenditure is something you actually pay ongoing, like a maintenance, whatever. Example, very good example is you want to purchase your own car, you make investment, so and then you start using it, you only pay for the maintenance, maybe servicing purpose. But if you want to rent a car, maybe a Zoom car, let's take an example, so you only take it on a rental basis, you don't do any servicing or anything as such, you directly pay for an hourly basis or a daily basis, you take it as a rent and you use it and then you give it back. So that is like the public cloud. And private cloud is something you're owning, something you're purchasing, you're owning that. So a cloud, there are three types of services. One is the main services, three types of main services. Yeah, here I was about to say the models: public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud. Now the trend is multi-cloud. So most of the organization, they want to actually store their data in multiple clouds. So now they don't want to stick with single cloud. They want to go use multiple clouds. The reason can be a lot of different reasons, because yeah, a lot of organizations started their hosting their environment in AWS initially, because AWS is the first into the market in 2006. From 2006 until 2013, there is no competitors for AWS. So over this close to 7 years time, there is no other cloud provider. I think IBM Cloud was there, but still not very competitive to AWS. So AWS, a lot of customers already migrated to AWS. But for any company, it is known that in the market, any company who actually migrated or who hosted their environment at one place, maybe in an on-premises or in a cloud, anywhere, so it will take at least 10 years of time for them to start thinking about migrating or moving or thinking about changing the hardware. That's the trend actually. So that is the reason you notice a lot of customers still don't want to migrate their environment from on-premises to cloud, because they really don't want to touch the critical application. If the application goes down for an hour, so they'll experience a lot of business impact. So they don't want to touch that. So due to that reason, a lot of customers will not actually show interest. Let's say in this 7 years of period, whichever customer actually migrated to AWS already, they don't tend to initially directly move it, but instead what they will use, whatever they have already migrated, they will keep in AWS itself. But whatever they want to create newly, they might go with other cloud providers if they want to, AWS or GCP or any other cloud provider for that matters. So that is the reason you will see multi-cloud setup now. So multi-cloud setup, even but it's very easy. If you learn one cloud, other cloud, only naming conventions will be different, but everything else will remain same. But Azure is outstanding in last 3 to 4 years time. So Azure has actually started in 2010, but initial 3 years of time, it has a lot of drawbacks. Initially there was a model called Azure Service Manager model. The portal itself is completely a flop. So that portal is nowhere exists right now. So those 3 years of time, they have learned a lot of things, and then they have designed a new portal, new Azure Resource Manager portal in 2013. So that is when Azure, from then onwards, Azure started growing. And also another thing, Microsoft CEO, so Satya Nadella. So the way the moment he actually joined as CEO, so he directly stated that we love Linux also. So that is another turning point. So then right now in Azure, 51% cores, CPU cores are utilized by Linux. 49% cores are utilized by Windows. That is actually a fact. Outside people might think, I am actually comfortable in Linux, I'll go with AWS. People who are comfortable with Windows, let's go to Azure. That's not actually correct. So Azure has Linux and Windows both. So, and from 2013 onwards, it's been 7 years time. AWS has a market share of 31% overall all these years. Azure has gained 22% of market share in last 7 years of time, and still it is growing. So if you see last 3 years back, it was somewhere around 12. Now it has already gained 22. So it is exponentially growing. But whereas AWS is stagnant at the same percentage of market share, since 3 to 4 years, it's still at a 31%. It does not reduce, because I told you the reason also. Any customer who are already migrated, they really don't tend to immediately move it, because that's not really easy. So because they'll have a lot of things to look for. That is why you don't see market share reducing. but you also won't see market share growing also. But whereas other cloud providers, you're noticing that. So that's the difference, because since it has been into market since 15 years, a lot of people already learned AWS. So it's something like this: opportunities will be less. People who already learned AWS are more. But now Azure is, since it is in trending, so opportunities are more. But people who already learned Azure are very few people. So that is why you see a lot of call letters if you put uh, resume in Naukri. So that is about it, guys. And then, so cloud provides three types of services: IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. IaaS is something like infrastructure service, where you provide infrastructure on a rental basis. You'll give a operating system only, storage, only backend compute, storage, and networking will be managed by Microsoft. And starting from operating system will be handed over to customer. So customer will have a control to select, create an operating system and start using that. So that IaaS is actually, that is actually IaaS model. And whereas PaaS model, where you only will have a control on application and data. So I'm going to show you the OSI mode, OSI layer. Uh, just a minute, guys. Yeah. So this is what I was talking about. So in on-premises, you manage everything: storage, networking, compute, virtual machine, um, operating system, runtime, applications, data. So you manage everything. But whereas in cloud, you have three models that I called out: IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. In IaaS, compute, networking, storage will be taken care by Microsoft. From operating system, run virtual machine, operating system, runtime will be taken. All these will be taken care by us, whoever actually using it. And whereas PaaS, until runtime, will be taken care by Microsoft, only applications and data. So in DevOps, we mostly, in Azure admin, we mostly deal with these. In DevOps, we mostly deal with these. So that is why when you actually cover these two, you're pretty much covered everything. So, and this software service is something, this is very rarely, we don't touch this much, because here only data and access, they'll directly, example is O365, they'll simply, Microsoft will actually build an application, they'll give it to us to actually use it. So there is not much that you or me can do. So, but IaaS and PaaS, this is where, here you actually manage virtual machines and IaaS services. Here you manage web applications, web apps, function apps, AKS, a lot of things. AKS is also belongs to this. AKS managed service will actually belongs to PaaS. So here you actually deal with the PaaS. So our course, this complete package will include these two areas completely into very famous services that we will cover. Let's look at the regions. How many regions Microsoft has? So why it is important? Because when you want to reach globally, so it is important that let's say you want to build a website, you want to start something, you want to expand your business in Israel, let's say, for example. So in Israel, until unless your cloud provider has one region in Israel, you'll not be able to open that, right? You'll not be able to use it, because Israel does not encourage, or does not actually allow any other data that is coming into from another countries. They doesn't actually, they are more secure. So I'm just taking that as an example. So if in that case, you'll definitely pick a cloud provider who has a data center in Israel. You don't pick a cloud provider who doesn't have a data center, right? So for that matter, any customer always prefer any cloud provider who has a lot of regions across the globe, spread across the globe. So that will be their criteria as well, right? So if you look at Azure has 60 plus regions all over the globe, right? This is actually, this slide is taken some time back, I think 6 months to 1 year back. But right now they already have, in 2021 itself, they have a plan to expand by another 10 to 15. Within Asia itself, you'll see expanding close to 10. So, and we have something in Taiwan, Malaysia. So we have these regions are coming up within Asia itself. A lot of regions are coming. So 60 plus regions is a huge number, and this is representing close to 140 countries. And in fact, this number is highest compared to any other cloud provider. So do you know how many AWS hold actually? AWS regions are less than 30, close to 30, just half of it. And do you know how many GCP hold right now? They are just 14 regions across the globe. That's the difference. And also Azure still they're planning to add up additional data centers, additional regions. The reason being they know the future of the cloud. By 2023, it is expected to actually see $500 billion of cloud business. When you're expecting such a huge business, Azure actually in exactly in a plan to actually do explore in the same fashion. So for Microsoft, Azure is a primary business, but whereas for other cloud providers, you don't see them as a primary. For AWS, yes, AWS for Amazon, AWS is primary business, but not that. That is not the only one. They also have the e-commerce. They also have the other products. But for GCP, their primary business is Google YouTube ads. That's a primary business for them, not the GCP. So when you're actually focusing on a primary business, that also plays an important role for customers to actually start using cloud provider. Okay. This multiple regions will help actually in providing residency. Like you want to build something in your own country. So if you have a data center, you can directly go ahead and build. If you look at example China, so China doesn't allow their organizations to actually store data outside of China. So when you have a data center within China, of course you'll create a service there. So something like this. So when you have multiple regions, that will give you the flexibility and global reach for you. And also you will see something like this. You're seeing different symbols here. Whatever you see in a completely blue, they're actually regions fully available. They are directly available for use. Whatever you see in a blue with a small white dot, they're actually called availability zones. So availability zones, there will be 3 data centers. All these fully blue ones, there will be only single data center in these regions. But whatever you see in a white dot in the middle, so there you'll see 3 data centers in a single region. And announced availability zones. Announced availability zones are coming up, so they will see them here. Announced availability zones, something like this. I think in Central India, we have Central India or West India. There is a plan to actually build one available. You can see Central India. There is a plan announced availability zones that will come soon, which means 3 data centers they will build within Pune itself. And announced availability zones, announced regions with availability zones here. So this is about this. So yeah, I talked about AWS, right? So you can see the numbers, you can count them on numbers. So this is actually AWS regions. Azure also will actually pair regions. Each region will be paired with another region in Azure. The reason being to provide a disaster recovery purpose. So if anything goes bad, if any natural disaster occurs at any region, so you'll have a secondary region available for each region in Azure. So that secondary region will be close to these 2 regions will have a little bit of high-speed connectivity for replication purpose, and they will be 300 miles away from each other, which means close to 470, 500 kilometers away from each other. And then whichever, let's say you as a customer, you enable disaster recovery for your services. So if any natural disaster occurs on your primary region, so immediately Microsoft will take a secondary region as a priority. They will immediately bring your services back online. So that is why these pair regions that is how these pair regions will help. And also they will roll out the updates. So let's say updates in the sense maintenance updates, installation of OS and stuff like that. So they will first focus on primary region. Once the updates are completed on primary region, then they'll actually start looking at a second region. So that is how they'll ensure that only one region is always impacted, not the other regions. And there is an option called, there is a few other concepts called availability options. So by default, if you're creating a single virtual machine in Azure, so you get only 99.9%. So 99.9% of SLA, which means close to 43 minutes per month is a downtime that you're agreeing. What is SLA first of all? SLA is a service level agreement that you agree with, that cloud provider will agree with you. You and cloud provider will actually agree upon, and then that's agreement between you and cloud provider. If you are using a single virtual machine in Azure with a premium disk, you're allowing that you're accepting that you're accepting this 99.9%, which means you're accepting that even if your VM goes down for 43 minutes or 49 seconds, you're accepting this downtime per month. Let's say if your application is very critical, you want to actually reduce this downtime from 43 minutes to further down, then there are options. Microsoft will provide you certain options called availability zones. Availability set is one option, and availability zones is other option. Availability zones will actually give you higher availability with 99.99%. Here you actually maintain 3 copies of your application, balanced across balanced using load balancer across these 3 VMs, and even if one goes down, you will have another one available. So that way you'll have high availability with this setup. With this setup here, you only have single VM, but here you have 3 VMs. With this setup, you get high availability of 99%, 99 SLA of 99.999, which is actually close to 4 minutes. 43 minutes has come down to 4 minutes. So in a month time, this is the least, this is a minimum that you can actually expect. 4%, 4 minutes of downtime in 730 hours. And then multi-region setup is something where you actually do a disaster recovery. Region 1, region 2, you'll do a disaster recovery. So even if this goes down due to natural disaster, you'll have other one available actually for you. So this is about high availability options that are being provided by Microsoft. Then the tools that will be used to actually manage Azure. So resource, I talked about ASM and ARM, right? Initially, I talked about Azure Service Manager, then Azure Resource Manager. So Azure ASM and ARM. ASM was actually has a lot of drawbacks. Then they actually built this ARM, Azure Resource Manager, which this is actually based out of JSON JavaScript object notation. So on top of this JSON, so this is actually a layer, API layer. So it takes the request from your all the inputs, whatever, whichever way you give the input, like Azure Portal or PowerShell or CLI, Cloud Shell or REST API or mobile app, whichever way you give the input, that input will be actually taken by this ARM, and it will convert that input into a JSON format, JavaScript object notation format, and that will send it to backend hardware. So if you let's say you're trying to build a virtual machine here, so the process here is it takes the input, it converts the input to JSON format, then it will send the input to the Fabric controller in the backend. The Fabric controller is responsible. There will be something. There are a few things like resource providers here. You'll see certain things like resource providers, multiple resource providers. So for each resource type, you'll have a resource providers. So yeah, for each resource provider, yeah, in case if any of you have any questions, anything that you want to ask, you can post them in the chat. So I'll take up all the questions. So these are kind of resource providers. For virtual machine, you'll have a separate resource provider. For networking, separate, storage, separate. For web app, separate. For each of the service, whatever you see, for database, separate. Everything you have a separate resource provider. That resource provider is responsible to actually provide you the resource. Let's say you're actually requesting for a resource, you're actually requesting for a virtual machine that actually will be provided by a compute resource provider. Your ARM will actually convert that into a JSON format, and it will send the request to your this resource provider. Parallelly, simultaneously, if you send a storage request, it will send it to storage. Then it will send to network if you send a network request. So this resource provider is responsible. This will actually send the request to Fabric controller. That Fabric controller will build a VM for you, and then it will hand over to you. That is how you get a confirmation of a VM creation. So this completely, it actually builds on top of this. So this along with this ARM itself, these resource providers concept has bought in, because these are parallel operations. So that is why you see faster creation, faster deletion stuff. But whereas in ASM, we don't have faster creation deletion. It was serial mode, where it has to depend on one thing. First, this has to be deleted, then the next storage will be deleted, next NIC will be deleted. So it is serial mode. That is why it used to take at least an hour to actually create and delete in old model during the period of 2010 to 13. So why I'm talking about this, because when you go to an interview, so probably you might be asked about the history of Azure also, when it is introduced, what happened initially, then why, how this has come, all these stuffs. You might get those questions. That's the reason I'm covering these. So coming to management models, Azure Portal is the primary. If you're an administrator, you use it. But if you're a developer, developer or a DevOps person, you most likely don't use the portal much. Yeah, you might use a CLI or PowerShell, or you'll use another automation ways like infrastructure as a code, probably ARM templates or Terraform, Ansible or Chef or Puppet. So you might use those tools to actually manage. And Cloud Shell is actually a web-based tool, so web-based browser-based tool, which actually provides both PowerShell and CLI built in. these details, whatever I'm just going on high level, like top level. But in detail, we have separate topics in detail in next coming days, so we'll cover them in detail. So in the Azure follows this defense in depth strategy. So at every stage, you'll have the security in place. As I said, these are all big companies. They'll invest huge money into the security. So you'll at any stage, you'll have the data completely secured, because by default data that is actually during the travel, which is a transit, or at a rest, which is stored. Let's say you upload some data to Azure storage. So that is actually sitting in a data center. The data that is sitting is also encrypted. Let's say you're trying to download the same. When you try to download, it will actually travel from your from Microsoft data center physical hardware to your machine, right? During this time also it will be encrypted. So we call it a data at rest, data at transit. So data is completely encrypted in Azure. There is no option for you to disable that encryption as well. So at every layer, starting from physical security to till data, you have a defense in depth strategy. Even if any attacker actually attacks at one layer, they'll not be able to enter to other layer. So that is the idea. Shared, and it is also important that the shared responsibility. Sometimes it's not only completely responsibility of cloud provider. It also have some, there will be some responsibility that has to be taken care by customer also, because as we have talked about these models, I ask only Microsoft will take care of these three. So when customer is actually handling these three, it is customer responsible to ensure security. Let's say you have created a virtual machine, it is your responsibility to create a user with a complexity requirements, complex password. So that is something in your hands. Microsoft will not interfere there. Same way in PaaS, wherever a customer actually hold the control, it is their responsibility to ensure the security. There is some shared responsibility also. So there, Microsoft and customer both collaboratively should actually ensure the security. There are a few other concepts called authentication and authorization. So authentication is something, to give a better example, let's say you're actually working for a company in a tech park. First of all, to enter into a tech park, you'll show your ID card, right? The ID card is to prove that they'll look at your photo and look at you and they'll look at the photo. And then they'll authenticate you. Authenticate in the sense they'll verify that, okay, this photo, this ID card is yours, the photo that is representing here, and also your face, both are matching. So they'll authenticate you and they'll allow you to inside. So that is called authenticating. You're proving yourself. Once you're authenticated, you'll go inside, and then if you want to go enter into any building, you'll not, because you're actually your security guard actually allowed you to go inside, you cannot actually enter into any of the building, right? So you'll be only able to enter into a building that you're actually authorized to. Authorized to in the sense, wherever you are working, only for that building you'll have a ID card access or swiping or any mechanism. Only for that building you'll be authorized to enter, right? So that is where the authorization will come in place. So authentication and authorization will work together. Authentication is something you will actually what do you say, you'll actually authenticate yourself, you will verify your identity. And then authorization is something, once the verification is done, then the authorization will come in place. Whatever you're authorized to do it, you'll be only able to do that. Whatever you're not authorized to do it, you'll not be able to do it. Why this concept has come in picture now? Because Azure works in the same way. First of all, you enter your credentials, you authenticate yourself, you'll enter into Azure portal, either by GUI model Azure portal, or by PowerShell or CLI, or by any infrastructure as code model, Terraform or anything. So you enter in, you provide the credentials, you authenticate yourself. But once you authenticate yourself, then the concept called RBAC, role-based access control, will come in picture. Whatever the roles that you're actually, whatever the role that is assigned to you, based on that, you'll be authorized to do only those certain things. So that's actually another model. This model also has come in ARM itself. This was not there in ASM. Okay. We call it as role-based access control. Whatever your role, based on that role, you'll get the access. Then multi-factor authentication. This cloud has actually gave a lot of things, because in Windows servers, if you ideally want to establish multi-factor authentication, you have to do a little complex setup. But in Azure, it is easy. You have to, in Windows, you have to have a Radius server and stuff like that, so to have a multi-factor authentication. But in Azure, so it is easy. Like by default, all users that are there in Azure, they'll have by default MFA. You can actually enable MFA easily. And multi-factor authentication is something like, it actually verifies you via these three ways. One is something you know, something you possess, something you are. Something you know is username, password. something you possess is something, probably your phone where you get an authenticator, you'll approve, or your phone where you get a OTP, or a mobile number, you get a call. That is something you possess. Something you are is, it is yourself, probably a biometric or a face unlock kind of something you are. So these are the three ways it actually will authenticate. Three ways it will actually authenticate you. When you are actually, a lot of organizations have implemented this already. So to authenticate you, that is why it is much secure right now compared to olden days. So a lot of organizations have already implemented this. Even if attacker actually gains your username credentials, username password credentials, he will not be able to log in because he'll not be able to authenticate in other two ways, right? So that is how it is much secure. Coming to conditional access, so Azure actually provides this conditional access. So where it has a built-in intelligence, artificial intelligence that is actually built in. So it detects the location. Let's say this happens not only with Azure. Let's say you're logging into Gmail, logging into any account. Even if you're logging into Amazon account also, e-commerce website account also. If you're logging, all of a sudden, if you're logging from a different location, let's say from Israel or from any other location, it immediately enforce, either it will enforce for MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. It will ask you to send you a OTP or send you a notification to approve, or else it can block also. If it detects there is some threat from that particular IP range, it will immediately block also. So this is called multi-factor authentication. These organizations actually, Microsoft also have this conditional access setup, where based on your device, location, application, real-time risk, these are the areas it will look at. If it identifies any risk at any of this stage, it will immediately either enforce for a multi-factor authentication, or it will block the authentication directly, or it will allow. So these three options it will do. So based on the selection, it happens. These rules are something that we set up. An Azure AD administrator will do that. Yeah. Finally, price calculator is something, it is always possible for you to check the pricing of your services, whatever is being charged. Let's say, I mean, you plan to create one virtual machine in Azure, but you don't know how much you will be charged. So this is the place that you can come. You can select all the data. Let's say which region you want to build, what is the operating system you want to use, and what is the size, how many CPUs, how much RAM that you want to use. So when you make those selections, how many disks that you need, when you make those selections, you'll get a pricing something like this. So the pricing, this may, something like this. If you use it for how many hours, so based on the hours, you'll get a pricing. So you'll get that price calculator. Most of the times, I mean, it will be very close figure, not exact figure. So you cannot say that you're using, you got this 188, and while you are using a VM, after month end, if you get 190, you should not go ahead and ask Microsoft that, I got $2 extra, because this is just an estimate for you, but this is not the exact number. So your exact number may vary a little bit based on the usage, based on the network bandwidth that you use, based on some external factors that can influence, but not a huge difference, a little bit of difference. So this will help you. This is a price calculator, Azure price calculator. This will help you in estimating your budget. Typically, a small architecture will look like this, an admin, because we plan to cover both, right? Azure admin plus Azure DevOps. If you look at, if you want to handle both of these, if you want to create a virtual machine, you might be given an architecture something like this, and to actually set this up. So here you have to build one VM, then NIC, one public IP address, NSG, which is actually kind of a security firewall, network security group, then your disks. So this setup, you'll be given a small architecture, something like this. This architecture not only for admins, for DevOps persons also, you'll get an architecture, but that will be most likely related to VMs. Sometimes you place VMs also. There you'll get a component such as application gateway, API management, Dockers, Kubernetes, then load balancers. Those services you'll see there. So we'll also look at those architectures as well later. So this is how a typical architecture will look like. You'll have to set up this environment. If you're wondering what kind of job that I do, so if I actually finish entire this course, so it depends. In organization, if you may be asked to set this up, you may be also asked to do the same thing in automation way. So this is what I want to actually achieve. So either you can do it in a portal way, that is an administrator will do, or you can do it in an automation way, like Terraform this. That is something a DevOps engineer can do. So that is something can be achieved in both the ways. But typical architecture will look like this. And if you go a little more complex, so you'll see multi-tier architecture, something like this, where you have a load balance. This is a 3-tier web application, web tier, application tier. So this is something a typical architecture where an engineer, an admin, and DevOps engineer will most likely most likely he will actually involved in this. So he'll be asked to set this up probably most of the times in automated way he'll be asked to do it. But what we will do, so it is not directly possible to do it automated way. So in admin we'll try to do it in the manual way. Then in DevOps we'll do it same thing in an automated way. So then you'll be able to correlate and you will learn. You'll be when you correlate. We have done this in automated way, manual way, and then you're doing it automated way. You'll be easily able to learn that. So that is the idea. And if you see web application with a relational database, so this is actually another web application architecture will look like typically. So where you have application gateway subnet, and then you have a web tier and database tier. Here you have a load balancer. Here you have application gateway. Application gateway is actually balancing load across 3 nodes. And you have a public IP address mapped with a DNS. So this is a typical architecture it look like. So this is how you're going to deal with the Azure services when you actually work on a Azure admin or Azure architecture, anything Azure DevOps or Azure admin, DevOps engineer expert, because it's kind of a mixed role that you most likely will be into. You'll not be asked to do work at one specific thing. In on-premises, you have that luxury. Okay, so if you are a server support engineer, you'll only support server. If you have a network engineer, you'll only support network. If you are a storage engineer, you'll only support storage. But here it's not like that. And a cloud administrator will most likely touch everything. And DevOps engineer, and yeah, this role, there is no limitations here, is what I'm trying to convey. The typical services of Azure will look like this, where you have a security portal, Active Directory, Key Vault, important ones, automation. In the compute, you have a cloud services, service fabric, batch, web apps, API management, and in developer services, Visual Studio, application insights, SDKs. In analytics, we have machine learning, HD Insight, Data Factory, event hubs. In integration, you have BizTalk services, Service Bus, CDNs, data. So these are the commonly used services in all areas: compute, web, mobile, developer, data. In IaaS, so in IaaS you deal with these containers, virtual machines in compute, in storage, blob, files, premium, and in networking. So in gateway, VPN gateway, traffic managers, express route, DNS, load balance. These are the services, typical services. Commonly, these are not the only services. There are many more services apart from these, but these are the commonly used services. And this number is actually old number. And coming to, I think we're done with this theory, only just comparison that I want to show you. So this is actually a trend from 2010. That is when Azure started. Initial 3 years, where is Azure? Azure is in orange. Initial 3 years, there is not much of a great, market for Azure. So there is not much of not many customers actually use this. Then actually with a new model, it started growing exponentially. And then whereas other cloud providers, you're seeing AWS has already have some market that time. And then in last, this is for AWS. From 2017 onwards, slowly it is actually reducing the decline. And then this is actually for skills opportunities. So year-on-year demand for cloud skills actually. The general cloud skills actually, if you look at the numbers, year-on-year growth for Azure demand actually up by 58% since 2017. And the comparatively cloud skills actually in general cloud skills actually grown by 29%. AWS alone actually grown by 14%. So you can see the huge difference in the demand for the Azure skills. It's 58% year on year. Then if you look at month on month cloud skills starter jobs, this is actually for 2020, September 19 to September 2020. So not the latest one, but last year one. So if you look at that last year during pandemic, so that's important, right? So in the pandemic, how cloud has Azure has actually done, that is also important, right? So for starters, demand on cloud skills in general is down by 30%. So in last 12 months, it is down by 30%. Demand for AWS is down by 17%. And overall for Azure, it is actually up by 15%. So again, it is still positive even in the pandemic time. So that's another good thing. And in fact, out of Fortune 500 companies, 95% of Fortune 500 companies, they are already using Azure, because Azure, yeah, so they're already using Azure. And coming to market share, this is actually April 2021. But the latest one, the June latest one is not available here. Latest one, in the latest one, it is evident that right now in previous quarter, it was 19%, but last quarter, it was 22% for Azure. So which is actually 3% gain in within 1 quarter of market share. So, and that AWS has 32, 31, 32, it is stagnant since last 3-4 years. And the important point here is the 42%, this is actually left by others. This is actually not, still there's a lot of opportunities for Azure itself, right? So this all together, we are only just looking at 58%, but remaining 42% is still there are opportunities that are left. That is the reason Microsoft clearly they are actually starting to build new data centers, because they have seen this future. So that's why they are doing this. Yep. So yeah, this is about it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, when you have a good leader, of course, your company products and your company will be in a good direction. So that is actually, and Microsoft Satya is actually world #1 CEO in last 2 years. That is also another good point. So these are all these things why I'm trying to convey, because Azure has better advantage. Learning Azure has a better advantage compared to learning other cloud providers, cloud any AWS or GCP. My SAT model basically will look like this. So I will first try to the content knowledge, then practical application, then testing skills. These are three important. This is how I prepare for my certification. First of all, attend the training, learn theoretically, and also while trainer doing demonstration, then do some practical application using labs. Then if possible, try to attempt 1 or 2 test exams, practice exams, then directly go ahead and attempt certification. So that is possible, you can go. Otherwise, you can directly attempt the exam. So this is the approach that I usually follow. And coming to exams model, yeah. So this is about it. So you might have a question like, what are the prerequisites for me to actually learn this? So there are a couple of virtualization concepts that you need to learn, and then networking concepts, AD concepts, and disaster recovery concepts. So these all concepts, basics, I'm already covering as part of this training itself. The first day we'll cover all the basics, then we'll start off with the next day we'll start off with the module actually. So that is the approach we're following. And then any questions? I've been actually rushing through the slides, but any questions that you guys have?
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was good, sir. But the thing is, we were expecting some more about the DevOps because we have clearly covered the Azure administration part, but about the DevOps, we were
Correct.
expecting.
Yeah, so actually, so as I said, this course is part of 2 certifications, right? So we are actually starting because without actually having knowledge on admin, so there may be, yeah, it's good that you already covered admin, so that's a good thing. But there may be few trainees who actually have not not tried Azure admin itself, because for them also we want to give an opportunity. So that's why we are starting with Azure admin first. This might take a 4 to 5 weekends time for us to complete Azure admin. Then Azure DevOps will start after 5 weekends of time. So this is actually, as I said, 2 certifications model. So Azure admin will cover initial 4 to 5 weekends. Next, so what I'm going to do for next DevOps course, I'll also actually invite you guys for a dedicated DevOps demo. There, I'm not going to talk about admin at all. I'm completely going to talk about DevOps. So there, I'm actually going to conduct. That's why you see my title as Demo 1. So there will be another Demo 2 for fully dedicated to DevOps. There you don't see admin related content. here, because we are actually starting off admin, so you will see majority of admin content. Only just I'm going to show you the content that we are going to deliver for DevOps also. So you'll see these slides. So this is actually the content that we are going to, how many modules that we are going to cover, what are all topics that we are going to cover. I am actually going to show that here on a high overview, but for a detailed demo dedicatedly on DevOps is something. Yep, yes, yeah. I mean, because if I cover demo now, so I'll start my course after 5 weekend times, then you might actually not sync with this. So that's the reason we have another demo for DevOps again. But here I'll give you a high overview. What is what we are going to cover for both admin and DevOps. That's a good question, Girish, because maybe others also might have same question in their mind. So with your question, I got an opportunity to answer to others.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Azure admin, we have these, it is outlined in this way. We have 11 modules covering admin, virtual machines, administrations, which includes PowerShell, CLI, ARM templates, portal, networking, and storage monitoring. Serverless includes web app, AKS, containers. Of course, this is included in DevOps also. So we'll only give basics, and we'll give in detail in DevOps. And then identity, we'll go in depth in DevOps, basically. Identity, data protection, which is actually backup disaster recovery. Then inter-site connectivity, which is something site-to-site connectivity, express route, virtual WAN, these will cover, and VNet to VNet peering will cover here. Network traffic management, this is where we cover UDRs, user-defined routes, and stuff like user-defined routes, and load balancing, application gateway, those will cover here. And governance and compliance, we cover RBACs, logs, tags, those will cover in this administrator stuff. So if you look at DevOps also, DevOps is pretty lengthy one, where you have this is completely official course. So when I say official course, if you go and look at the official course curriculum, you will see the same thing. Let me quickly show that. Yeah, so if you look at the official curriculum, so whatever you see in official, Microsoft officially declared, so most of the institutes, they'll train DevOps, they'll say Azure with DevOps, but they'll not cover complete content. They'll only cover 2 to 3 tools, maybe 4 or 5 tools they'll cover, but not complete thing. This is actually kind of how a corporate trainer will actually train to corporate, employees. So same kind of training we want to actually deliver at a nominal price. That is the idea. So you'll get complete content covered in this. So as per the official curriculum. Okay, so here you have close to 20 modules we have about, and we'll start with DevOps, and in detail you will see everything. So if you want me to show the, so in detail, so we are going to cover, these are the things that we are going to cover in Azure DevOps. We'll cover Azure boards, Git, Azure repos, Azure project wikis, and then Azure pipelines, GitHub actions, Azure artifacts. Then we'll cover Ansible, Chef, Puppet, Terraform, ARM templates is another thing. And also apart from this, there is actually to compete this Terraform, Microsoft has come up with a Bicep. I'm not sure whether you guys are already aware or not. There is a new, which is actually on top of ARM templates. They're trying to replace ARM templates. Not exactly replacing, but that's a competitor for Terraform. So Bicep is a new tool that Microsoft has introduced in last month. So that also I'm going to cover a little bit. We are also going to do some lab on Bicep also. So that will be a very cool tool actually. I've already gone through it. And then along with this, we'll see app services, containers, and Kubernetes, application insights. Yeah, so integrating SonarQube. So on a high level, these are all we are going to cover. I think pretty much all tools that you see in this. And also all these, whatever I just talked about, we have dedicated labs for these. I'm going to cover theory, and then I'm going to show you a demonstration. Then we have dedicated labs for this. I'm going to share detailed lab instructions also as an assignments, kind of technical, practical oriented assignments. This is about DevOps content. Girish, did I at least 50% answer your question? Are
Yeah,
still not
yes, yes.
convinced?
No, no, no,
Okay.
it's okay, sir. Fine.
Okay. So that's about it. Let's go see next slides. Yeah, so the roles, I think, as I say, it's a mix of roles. Cloud admin no longer, we don't have no longer, we no longer have a direct cloud admin. We no longer have direct DevOps role. It's mix of both. So you most likely will do something, a few things from this, few things from this. You'll for automation and for automation most likely DevOps role will take care of automation. The admin role will take care of infra side. So you will actually deal with both actually.
Sir, I have a small question. When you're saying that automation, so automation is completely based upon the scripting or scripting kind of thing. So there's once again my question comes to the same. How
Mm.
much percentage of
Yeah,
scripting knowledge one should have?
yeah, that's why my answer already I told you, right? You don't have to know any script actually, because in here idea here is we'll start with basics, then we'll slowly speed up to the speed. So that's the plan actually. So you don't need to have any knowledge, prior knowledge actually. All you need is just basics about the virtualization, basics about the infra. So then from there we'll start off. So you don't
Fine.
really need to be a developer. You don't need to actually already know some scripting kind of. So yeah, so that is for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Then this is the weightage for the exam. So for A104, the weightage networking and compute is higher weightage, and remaining storage, governance, and backup. So with this course, because it's official course, so you'll be able to. When I say official course, it's official. The content will be the same, not like. Yeah. So content, whatever we have official curriculum, so we have tried to cover the same content here. So higher the weightage, more questions you're expected to see. And then for DevOps, you have these are the modules that we have. So SRE, and then security compliance, source control, then continuous integration, delivery. So you have higher weightage for this continuous integration. Then rest all have a normal 10 to 15 percentage, and here you have less weightage. So you may get more questions into this. And coming to exam scenario, kind of questions, what kind of questions that you get in the exam? So one type of questions, few questions you'll get something like this, where you'll be given a scenario and also a solution. You'll be asked to select yes or no. So something like this, you're asking a question, you're also giving an answer. Does this solution meets your question, meets your need? So then if you agree, you say yes, otherwise no. This is one type of question that you see, at least 4 to 8 questions. Then single answer question, where you actually where you will be given a scenario and you will be asked to select one thing. And then and also multi-choice, multiple. So this is specifically I'm calling out because when you're attempting an exam, you will forget this number. You'll only select one thing and you'll attempt it. So that is actually, that will not give you full marks, right? So this something you need to keep in mind. There will be some questions where you will be selected to asked to select 2 or 3 options. So you have to keep that in mind and you have to select accordingly. Again, this is actually practical, scenario based. You don't see any labs. You'll not be asked to log into portal and do something. Even in Azure DevOps or in Azure admin, none of the Azure certification have this lab setup. You'll not be asked to log into the portal and then do some lab. So that is something you'll not see. Then there will be another scenario based where you have to maybe set up some steps or a drag and drop kind of questions. You have to drag the answer and drop in a right harder here. So finally, exam is available in 3 modes basically, but the third mode you can ignore. This is for mostly for organizations where they want to conduct within their organization. But first 2, you can write it in exam center. You can write in at home also. When you're writing at home, you have to ensure that uh, because it's work from, a lot of people will tend to write from home. So when you're writing from home, you have to just keep your place clean and your laptop. So there will be one software that you need to run. It will ensure that everything is safe. And then you have to show your room in R4 directions. uh, you'll be completely in for close to for complete exam duration. You'll be under surveillance. They'll completely watch you. So, and there should be no background noise or anything as such. So and you should have good internet speed. That's important. Yep. Finally, any questions? I think we are done with this thing. I think we are done in on time. Any questions that you guys have? Uh, okay. So anyone who is interested, want to get more details, you can just drop a note to this email, or you can just send a text to any of these numbers or ring to any of these numbers. And if you want to chat with us, so you can directly browse this URL in a website. You'll be redirected to WhatsApp chat. You can chat with us. Any questions that you guys have? Let me see if there are any questions that are posted in chat. Okay. So currently, currently I'm working as a developer instead of going for, okay. Can I shift to, yeah, 104? You're going for developer instead of going to 204, you want to shift to 104. That is something you need to think, because if you're a native developer, when we cover 104 content, if you're comfortable with content, I think you can definitely go. But my suggestion would be uh, go to 204 itself. Then yeah, you can always learn 104. There's no doubt there. But because you're a developer, so I recommend you to go to 204. Then at least cover that up. Then probably you can try DevOps in our course. But yeah, that's what I would suggest, because you're natively developer. Admin may not suit you because you might get bored with admin sometime. Yeah, an admin, like an admin will never actually want to do scripting, any coding. So same way developer also might think, if you're not like completely native developer coder, so then probably you can try, because initial 2-3 days you can attempt our training. If you like, you can continue. If you don't like, you can always drop. No problem there. I think Amy, you're not there in this training. It seems I would be able to answer. Okay. Did you heard my answer? Can you confirm in chat? Did I answer your question, Amy? Okay. Anyone else has any other questions? Okay, great. Okay, guys. So in case if you guys do not have any questions, so I just want to also inform about the course schedule.